They said Jesse Callahan was a killer, a gunslinger, an outlaw, a ghost in the canyons. The newspapers called him the Devil of Red Mesa after the shootout at Carson's Pass. The lawmen swore he'd left a trail of bodies from Texas to Colorado. And the bounty posters, yellowed and torn, promised $5,000 for his head, dead or alive. But to Abigail Monroe, he was the man who wrote letters filled with poetry. Not the kind from books, rough-edged words scribbled in haste between gunfights and midnight rides. He wrote of a cabin in the pines, of waking up to silence instead of gunfire. He wrote about the way the desert smelled after rain, and how he wished he'd known her before the world turned him into a man with a price on his back. She didn't believe half of what the papers said, because Jesse had signed his last letter like this: "If a man has someone waiting for him, maybe he'll stop running. Maybe he'll become someone worth waiting for." And Abigail, against her better judgment, had written back, "Then I'll wait. Just once, but don't make me a fool, Jesse Callahan." Now, she stood at the edge of Whisper Creek, the last stop on the stage line, where the wind carried the scent of dust and sagebrush. The town was little more than a saloon, a blacksmith shop, and a boarded-up sheriff's office. No Jesse, no welcome, just the hollow creak of the windmill spinning lazily in the distance, and the low groan of a drunk snoring beneath the water trough. A spotted cow ambled over, chewing absently on the hem of her skirt. Abigail exhaled sharply and gripped the locket around her neck. Inside was her mother's portrait and Jesse's last letter, folded so many times the paper had gone soft at the creases. "If he doesn't come, I'll leave." She wasn't a fool. But if he did, God help her, she wasn't ready. From the bluff above town, Jesse watched her through a pair of rusted field glasses, his heart pounding like a loaded pistol. He'd actually come. He hadn't believed she would, not really. But there she was, just like the photograph she'd sent him months ago. Brown hair tucked into a practical bun, a spine straight as a rifle barrel, and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. She looked out of place in Whisper Creek, too clean, too sure of herself, and too damn late to turn back now. He didn't ride down right away. He wasn't ready. Hell, he was never ready. Not when his face still haunted wanted posters nailed to every sheriff's door between here and Missouri. Not when he had blood on his hands, some of it earned, some of it not. He hadn't lied in his letters, but he hadn't told her the whole truth either. Still, if she'd come here, knowing who he was, maybe that meant something. Maybe it meant everything. Abigail pushed open the saloon doors like she'd done it 100 times before, even though her palms were damp and her knees threatened to buckle. The room fell silent. Men turned. A poker game paused mid-bet. Even the piano player's fingers stilled on the keys. She kept her chin high and walked to the bar, her boots clicking against the warped floorboards. "I'm looking for Jesse Callahan," she said, her voice steady. The bartender, a grizzled man with a scar down one cheek, didn't speak, just wiped a glass with a dirty rag and nodded toward the shadowed corner booth. And there he was, hat low, duster caked with dust, hands wrapped around a whiskey glass like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. She stopped in front of him. "You're late." Jesse looked up slowly, his eyes, pale green like sunlit sage, locked onto hers. "You came," he said, rough. "I said I would." "You shouldn't have." She arched a brow. "But I did. What now?" For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, quietly, "Now you decide if the outlaw in the letters is the same man standing in front of you." And for one dangerous, breathless moment, she didn't answer, but her heart did.
They walked the edge of Whisper Creek in silence, boots crunching over dry grass and brittle stones. The saloon doors had barely stopped swinging behind them when Jesse had muttered, "Let's walk." Not for romance, for distance, from curious eyes, twitchy hands, and the ghosts that clung to him like gunpowder. Abigail kept her chin lifted, her gaze steady. She didn't ask questions. Not yet. He liked that more than he should. Finally, near the creek, Jesse stopped beside a twisted juniper tree. His roots gnawed like the regrets in his chest. The water rushed past, clear and cold, carrying secrets downstream. "I ain't proud of who I've been," he said, staring at the current instead of her. Abigail folded her arms, the wind tugging loose strands of hair from her bun. "Then who were you?" A muscle jumped in his jaw. Memories flickered. A boy of 12, holding his mother's cold hand in a too-quiet room. A brother, standing between his drunk father and a younger sibling, taking the blows meant for someone smaller. A young man staring at his own reflection in a sheriff's badge before tossing it into the Rio Grande. He said a boy who lost his mama too young. A brother to a drunk with a fast temper. A fool who picked up a gun and didn't know when to pull the trigger. Abigail's expression didn't flicker. And now? Jesse turned his face toward the horizon, where the sun bled into the hills. "Now," he said hoarsely, "I want a piece of land no one can take from me. A bed that don't move. A woman who don't flinch when I reach for her hand." The creek filled the silence between them. Abigail finally spoke, her voice softer than he expected. "Do you still carry a gun?" "Every day." "Would you kill again?" Jesse's voice dropped to a rough whisper, "Only to protect what's mine." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "That's not the worst answer." He took her to the hill beyond town, where the grass grew wild and the wind carried the scent of pine. A patch of earth had been cleared, not much, but enough. Stacked logs, half-cut timber, and the beginnings of a foundation marked the skeleton of a future. "I ain't never had much," he admitted, kicking a loose stone. "But I thought maybe I could start something here, something decent." Abigail stepped forward, her fingers trailing over the rough-cut beam. The wood was still fresh, sap clinging to her gloves. It smelled like pine and promise. "You wrote about a cabin. I thought it was a fantasy." "It was. But then your letters came, and suddenly I needed that fantasy to be real." She turned to him, the sunset painting gold streaks in her brown eyes. "What if I said no? What if I said this was too much?" Jesse didn't hesitate. "I'd ride you back to the station, make sure you got home safe. And I'd build this place anyway. Because once I pictured you in it, I couldn't unsee it." Abigail's breath caught. "You talk like a killer, but you dream like a man who wants saving." Jesse let out a dark, humorless chuckle. "Ain't nobody ever called me worth saving." She took a step closer, her skirts brushing the wildflowers. "Well," she murmured, "maybe nobody looked close enough." The sky burned honey gold, the first stars pricking through the dusk. Birds winged low across the field, their calls echoing in the quiet. Jesse didn't reach for her. He didn't dare. But Abigail did. One step, then another. Close enough to smell leather and sweat and something sweet beneath it. Soap, maybe, or the vanilla-scented hair tonic she'd mentioned in a letter. She looked up into his face, her eyes searching. "I haven't said yes," she murmured. "I know. But I haven't said no." Jesse's throat tightened. That's more than I deserve. Abigail smiled faintly, the first real one she'd given him since stepping off that stagecoach. I'll be the judge of that. And for the first time in years, Jesse Callahan let himself hope.
2 days had passed. 2 days of shared meals, Abigail burning the first batch of biscuits, Jesse laughing as he scraped off the blackened edges. 2 days of quiet conversations by firelight, her mending socks while he whittled a wooden spoon, the shavings curling at his boots like wood ribbons. It was almost domestic, almost easy. Jesse showed her how to split kindling without splinters. She taught him to knead dough without turning it to stone. Even Millie, the shopkeeper's wife, had sent over a jar of blackberry preserves with a knowing wink. It would have been perfect, if not for the shadow riding into town at high noon. Marshall Quaid. Tan duster, cold eyes, a smirk that promised trouble. He pinned a wanted poster to the saloon wall with the finality of a nail through a coffin. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the ink smudged but legible. Wanted, Jesse Callahan. $500 reward. Charges, robbery, escape, suspected murder. Armed and dangerous.
Morning light spilled over the half-finished porch, gilding the raw wood in gold. Abigail sat on the edge, her mother's locket open in her palm. The photograph inside showed a woman with soft eyes and a spine of steel, the kind who'd survived 2 husbands and a drought that wiped out her farm. "Mary's safe," her mother had always said. "Safe lasts." But Abigail had never wanted safe. She wanted true. Behind her, Jesse drove nails into a support beam, each strike measured, certain. He hadn't spoken since dawn, just worked, shirt sleeves rolled up, sweat tracing the lines of his back. His silence wasn't a demand, it was an offering. "You're free to go, but I hope you won't." "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, not turning. The hammering stopped, the killing, the running. Jesse exhaled, wiping his brow with his forearm. "I regret not standing up for myself sooner, not choosing better." He picked up another nail. "But I don't regret surviving, or what it taught me." Abigail traced the locket's edge. "And what did it teach you?" He sank the next nail with a single solid strike. That life doesn't hand you peace. You have to build it, nail by damn nail. She watched his hands, scarred, steady, as he kept working. By afternoon, the general store buzzed with whispers. Abigail barely crossed the threshold before the voices hit her. "That's the woman staying with Callahan. Poor girl don't know what she's getting into. He's dangerous. The marshal's just waiting on word to take him in. Should have hanged him years ago." A mother yanked her child closer as Jesse passed, though all he'd done was tip his hat. Abigail's grip on the lamp oil tin turned white-knuckled. She didn't speak, didn't argue, but she listened, and it burned. Marshal Quaid leaned against the post office, spitting tobacco, his gaze tracking Jesse like a hound on a scent. At dusk, Jesse sat on the porch steps whittling a piece of cedar into something shapeless. He looked up as Abigail dropped the oil on the makeshift table. "You're right," she said abruptly. He stilled. "They don't care if you've changed. They don't care what's true." She met his eyes. "They just want to see a man hang." Jesse set the knife down, waiting. Abigail stepped forward, the floorboards creaking under her boots. "So here's what I've decided." His shoulders tensed. "I'm not staying because I feel sorry for you or because you're broken." Her voice softened. "I'm staying because you stopped running. You looked your past in the eye and you stayed. That means more than anything you did before." Jesse's throat worked. "Abigail." "And I'm staying," she continued, "because I believe in the man who wrote me letters full of hope, even while carrying guilt in his back pocket." His breath shuddered. "You're sure?" "I've never been more." He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands hovering, reverent, hesitant, until she caught his face between her palms. "I choose you, Jesse Callahan," she whispered, "whatever comes." That night, beneath a roof of stars and unfinished beams, they built something quieter than vows. Jesse's lips brushing her knuckles, rough and tender. Abigail's laugh as he spun her in a slow swaying dance to no music at all. The way his hands, once trained for violence, cradled her waist like something precious. No wedding, no papers, no preacher yet. Just firelight flickering over 2 shadows leaning into each other, as if to say, "Here, this is enough." Abigail pressed her mouth to his ear. "You're worth building a life with, and worth defending if I have to." Jesse kissed her palm, a promise, a surrender, and somewhere in the dark, the outlaw in him finally laid down his gun. For now.
If you enjoyed listening to this story, do well to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comment section. See you on our next video. Toodles!